Welcome back to our prison series. This is episode 53. Today we're going to be talking about the 15 infamous last words from criminals on death row. Don't we all want to know what their last words were? Their strange last words before their execution. Okay, so what words does a convicted criminal choose to be their last words before they pass? Would they have asked for forgiveness or to tell their family they miss them? Most probably do. Others, however, have things to say, and here are some of the strangest last words before their execution. Okay, so this is back in Louisiana in 1987. His name is Jimmy Glass. His last words were, "I'd rather be fishing." On Christmas of 1982, 20-year-old Jimmy Glass and inmate Jimmy Wingo escaped from prison, and they basically got rid of an elderly couple, while burglarizing their home. Both blamed each other for the crime, and both ended up in the electric chair. Okay, so next on the list, number 2 is Jeffrey David Matthews. And this is 2011 in Oklahoma. His last words were, "I think that governor's phone is broke and he hadn't called yet." Isn't that interesting that that's all they have to say? Jeffrey David Matthews had his execution postponed 3 times. Twice by the governor of Oklahoma to further investigate his claims of innocence, and once due to the controversy surrounding the drugs they were going to administer to him. Matthews was indicted for the 1994 murder of his great-uncle, Otis Earl Short, after he and his accomplice robbed his home. Matthews shot Short in the back of the head and... oh gosh. We don't want to say what he did to the wife. He got rid of her, though. You guys would have to look that one up. But she managed to survive, and it was not good, people. Okay, so next on the list is a woman, Barbara Graham, in 1955 in California. Her last words were, "Good people are always so sure they're right." After a rough childhood and a string of failed marriages, Barbara Graham went into prostitution before being married again to a bartender and drug addict. She soon left him for a business associate of his, Emmett Perkins, who ran an illegal gambling operation. The couple, as well as other accomplices, decided to rob a widow who was rumored to have a large stash of cash in her home. Graham tricked her into letting them into her home by asking to use the phone to stop the elderly lady's shriek. I don't understand what they did, but yeah, that lady didn't survive, the one whose home they went into. So then they said the crew ended up overlooking the money and jewelry and was caught a couple months later after somebody told on them. Okay. And they said the media called her and was sentenced to the gas chamber. Okay. Okay, so next on the list is George Apple. In 1928, this was in New York. His last words were, "Well, gentlemen, you are about to see a baked apple." I guess he's talking about himself. While getting strapped to the electric chair, George Apple suddenly found the situation humorous and delivered those infamous last words. These words quickly spread through the public and became more remembered than his actual crime. He was convicted of first-degree murder for getting rid of a police officer, although little is known about that murder. Okay, next on the list is James Lewis Jackson in 2007 in Texas. His last words, it's a lot, people. "Warden, murder me." He then referred to Harris County, where he was convicted, as Sodom, Gomorrah, the biblical cities destroyed by God for their sin. He said he's ready to roll. Time to get this party started. That's what he said. In 1995, James Lewis Jackson married Sharon Jackson and became a father to 2 stepdaughters due to the heavy drug use. He had trouble keeping a job after struggling with the marriage and his wife threatening divorce. He ended up strangling. Okay, so listen, people, let's just say that he got rid of her and her 2 daughters. Okay, so These criminals are real criminals. As you can see, these are bad people. Oh, okay. Next on the list is Robert Charles Towery in Arizona in 2012. This guy looks bad. He said, "I love my family, potatoes, potatoes." Just look at this guy. That looks like a criminal, people. Robert Towery was executed through lethal injection, which is ironic, considering he was charged for injecting battery acid into his victim before. He's another guy doing bad stuff. Okay, so the victim was a philanthropist. Okay, so I'm just skimming over this. Okay, so this is another bad guy that just did so much bad stuff. But he did apologize to the victim's family, as if that makes it better. Okay, so let's move on to the next person on the list. George Engel. In 1887 in Illinois, his last words was "Hurrah for Arcany. This is the happiest moment of my life." I guess he's just ready to get out of here. I like that he was ready to go. I'm just skimming through. But they said he lost faith in the political process and joined the International Working People's Association. Okay, so let's just get to the next person. This is the lady who's pretty famous, Aline Wuornos, in 2002 in Florida. Her last words were, "Yes, I would like to say I'm sailing with the Rock and I'll be back, like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie Big Mothership and all, I'll be back, I'll be back." With a father who was a child molester and Jesus Christ, it gets worse. And a mother who abandoned her to the care of her grandparents. But yet her father passed away in jail. It was through suicide. But Aline Wuornos' childhood was a troubling one by the age of 12. Okay. But yeah, this lady was like a prostitute. And yeah, she claimed that when she was on a murder spree of 7 guys, that it was self-defense, but no, people, that's not self-defense, okay? So yeah, this is the lady who the movie Monster was inspired by. Okay, so next on the list is James French. This was in Oklahoma in 1966. His last words was, "How about this for a headline for tomorrow's paper? French fries." I guess that's really what he was craving, I would think. While serving his life sentence, he decided that he didn't want to live anymore, but was too afraid to end his own life. And so he got rid of his inmate to compel the state to execute him by electric chair. Okay, so next on the list is Johnny Frank Garrett in 1992 in Texas. Okay, you know what? It sounded like Texas has a lot of these criminals, people. That's what it's looking like. Okay, so his last words were, "I'd like to thank my family for loving me and taking care of me, and the rest of the world can kiss my booty." Okay, that's what he said, people. So this guy was indicted for murder and rape of a nun in 1981. Okay, so his execution was a controversial one due to the fact that he was mentally handicapped and only 17 when he was sentenced. He had a horrific childhood, and a mental health expert once described him as having one of the most virulent histories of abuse and neglect he had encountered in 28 years of practice. There is a lot of speculation that he was innocent, since the crime was similar to other incidents that led back to a detained Cuban refugee. Okay, next on the list is Robert Alton Harris in 1992 in California. His last words were, "You can be a king or a street sweeper, but everyone dances with the Grand Reaper." Okay, so it says in 1978, Robert Alton Harris and his brother Daniel Marcus Harris went to a fast food restaurant and abducted 2 teenage boys. They forced the boys to drive them to an isolated area where Robert basically got rid of them. The brothers then used the stolen vehicles to, do a bank type of robbery situation. They were discovered shortly afterwards in their home, and Robert was sentenced to the gas chamber while Daniel served 6 years in prison. Why is it that Daniel, his brother, got away, but he didn't? Maybe he said his brother, and the cops believed it, and, and then that's why one of them got away. Maybe. Okay, so next on the list is Richard Z. Vogel in 1996 in Missouri. Last words were keep the faith and rock on. And they don't have a picture of this person. Maybe this person didn't want to be taken pictures of. Okay, so this was another guy who did the bad stuff. Yep. Yeah, he's a bad guy. We don't want to say what he did because he's a bad guy. His name is Richard Zavogel. But he was executed later by lethal injection. And he got rid of his inmate, former inmate that he was with. But yeah, before that, he had life in prison. These people are some sad people. Okay, next on the list, another Texas guy, Patrick Brian Knight in 2007. His last words were, not all of us are innocent, but those are. I said I was going to tell a joke. He said, death has set him free. That's the biggest joke. I deserve this. And the other joke is that I am not Patrick Brian Knight and all. I can't stop this execution. Now go ahead. I'm finished. You know what? I agree with him that, yeah, the only way to get out of prison was, I guess, to go ahead and go through with it. Right, people? So they can be put out of their misery. Okay, so they said Patrick Brian Knight and his accomplice abducted a couple next door and locked them in their basement. The following night, Knight blindfolded them, drove them to a secluded area, and got rid of them in his own way. While awaiting his execution, he used websites and mail to ask for the best jokes he could use as his final statement. Although he received 1,300 jokes and was able to narrow it down to 5. He ended up naming several inmates he believed were innocent and using his own joke. Okay, next on the list is Thomas J. Grasso. And this was in Oklahoma in 1995. His last words were, I did not get my SpaghettiOs. I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this. Okay, that's it. He cared about his food, people. Ultimately, he still got what he wanted because the press, we all know about it now. Okay, so Thomas Gracio received the death sentence for getting rid of an elderly woman with Christmas lights during a robbery, and 6 months later, murdering an elderly man to steal his Social Security check. Although his last meal included 4 dozen steamed mussels and clams, a Burger King double cheeseburger, a half dozen barbecued spare rib, and 2 strawberry shakes. He was disappointed that they substituted spaghetti for SpaghettiOs. You know what, people? These people served their time for a long time. Maybe that's why the prisons believe they deserve something for being there all those years, and that they pretty much been here. Let's do something nice for them. I would assume that would be it at that time. Okay, so next on the list is Grover Cleveland Redding. And this was in 1921 in Illinois. His last words were, I have something to say, but not at this time. Okay, cool. Okay, so they say he was mentally unstable, believing that he was the prince of Abyssinia and was on a mission to bring his people back to the homeland. He was sentenced to death for starting an anti-government riot in which 2 of his followers were killed. They were still all waiting to hear what he has to say. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video and don't forget to subscribe.